everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. I'm so thrilled to have Lama Surya Das, who is one of my all-time favorite people, and we're talking about this book, Make Me One with Everything. So welcome.
Hi, CJ. Happy New Year. How are you, my dear?
Look at this book. Do you, do you see all this?
Beautiful.
It's just like, it's,
Yeah, you're a
it's
good
like,
student. I'm going to give you a pop quiz.
no, don't give me a pop quiz. But like,
How do you spell bodhisattva in Sanskrit?
I don't know.
Okay, never mind. Doesn't matter.
I failed. I've already failed.
Don't
Let's
get
just end
lost in
the
the
interview.
details. Keep your eye on the big picture.
That's what I'm trying to do. So, well, I'm trying. I don't know if I've succeeded, but I love this whole idea of inner meditation. And I swear this is, I've literally, I actually have typed parts of this thing into an email so I can reread it later. That's how much I love it. Anyway, so I love this book.
Thank you. That's very gratifying.
It's based on this concept called inner meditation. So I wanted to first introduce people who, and we did an interview a while back about inner meditation with your guru. And I wanted to talk just to refresh people's memory about what inner meditation is, and how it's different than kind of the traditional meditation that most people, they sit on the cushion, they close their eyes, they go inward, how it's different.
Um, yes, we've talked before about this. I wrote this book about inner, it's not inner, just for the listeners, intermeditation or co-meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the subtitle is Seeing Through the Illusion of Separateness. So it's not about closing your eyes and going inward, which is a general understanding about meditation. And, most people meditate or contemplate or introspect that way. This is a more integrated with life form. Of course, you can do it sitting on a cushion or lying in the corpse pose, looking up the sky or ceiling after yoga, or standing or in nature or anything. But the idea is more like breathing out into everything and dissolving and seeing through the illusion of separateness. So that's why I call it inter-meditation, taking off on Thich Nhat Hanh's famous phrase, interbeing, which means interwovenness, our interbeing with each of us and all of us, recognizing interconnectedness, interdependence. So co-meditation, co means with, so with other. But it doesn't just have to be other person. It could be other, it could be a pet, could be a tree, a mountain, a cloud, or waterfall, or the ocean, or God, whatever, the subject object duality is, whatever your other is. One can meditate on it or contemplate it, or breathe with it, breathe out into it, breathe in out of it, and dissolve with it into a less separate state of consciousness. So that's the idea of co-meditation or inter-meditation, or leading to interbeing, recognizing our inseparability and oneness as well as our diversity, and seeing unity in diversity, and in that way living in the one and as part of the one, and not as we usually do, which is as somewhat alienated, somewhat frightened, sometimes afflicted by other things besides fear, like loneliness, insignificance, feeling like a tiny speck in the universe, and things like that. Here we're more identified with the whole, and we're always interconnected and part of, and belonging and oneness. Of course, we can still decide what to do, go right or go left on the highway. It's not all one. It makes a difference. But let's not forget the oneness. Usually we spend our whole life trying to learn the many and lose sight of the one, even if we talk about God or oneness. Side of that, the bigger picture. And that's very important, to balance the bigger picture with the nitty-gritty details of karmic cause and effect.
So traditional meditation, the meditation that's most popularized is the idea of sitting on a cushion, closing your eyes, going inward, and quiet contemplation. It's not about going outward, co-meditating with anything. I mean, well, first of all, what are the various merits of co-meditating, intermeditation versus just the one that most people traditionally do? What's the differences and what are the benefits of co-med? I think we've talked about the benefits, but what's the difference?
The difference is that this is like, one of my brilliant friends, Ken Wilber, who is probably known to our listeners and friends, said, "Oh, wow, this is like." Hold on a second. It's a good example of interbeing and co-meditation, because we live life every day, and how do we relate to the spiritual side of things? Mm-hmm. Not just how do we meditate or how many times do we go to yoga, once, twice, or 3 times a week. That's not enough. It's enough to go to yoga, but there's 7 days in a week. There's many hours in a day. Mm-hmm. How do we breathe and live in a spiritual way, in a beautiful way? So interbeing is about that, not about sitting, crossing our legs, and closing our eyes. Of course, if we formally sit and meditate, that's probably good for us and healthy physically and mentally and spiritually and emotionally. If we do physical yoga or mantra yoga or karma yoga, good deeds and service, that's good for us in many ways. But the real practice is everyday life and meeting the challenges of everyday life without shrinking from it and without grabbing at it. So without giving in such attraction and aversion. And this meditation helps us see through the illusion of separateness. So there's no disturbance. Someone asked my Dzogchen master once, if there's nothing to stay one-pointedly concentrated on, like with your eyes closed in meditation, then how can you not be distracted? Mm-hmm. You don't like say a mantra or look at the light or concentrate on your breathing, or a picture, a mandala. How can you stay undistracted? And he said, there's nothing to stay stuck on, focused on. Therefore, there's nothing to be distracted from. Mm-hmm. There's nothing taking me out of the spiritual sphere. That's my own concept of compartmentalization. So that's life. That's a very challenging advanced course. So I'm just saying that's how that's different than just sitting down and breathing, closing our eyes and trying to calm and clear our mind, as every teacher says, and let go. Mm-hmm. Without explanation, it's simple, but it's not easy. Like letting go means letting come and go. I always say that. Letting be. There's a great acceptance in letting come and go, not just letting go and trying to suppress thoughts and feelings and memories. Come and go, letting be, like the waves on the ocean or the ripples on the stream of your consciousness. So then everything's part of it.
So here's the question I have about Buddhists. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Here's one question I have about Buddhists. There's some Buddhist teachers, and you're not one of them. You seem to me to be like a real person. And where some Buddhist teachers I've talked to, it's like they have this otherworldliness, like they're not necessarily in a good way, like they're on a different plane of reality. They're not.
Well, maybe they're more enlightened than us. I don't really think so. I know what you're getting at, but you want to explain a little more?
It's kind of an emptiness. It's like I'm letting go, but I'm not sure when I'm seeing the letting go if they're running away, they're in denial, they're complacent or indifferent, or if they're truly letting go. And is there a point when you let go to the point that you're just, if you become one with everything and this body is just a shell, then you're a human being living on this earth, but not really being here with us all. I don't understand that. And am I not getting something? I don't get it.
There's a big difference between complacency and indifference on one hand, and equanimity, spiritual detachment, transcendence, on the other hand. So we call, in Buddhism, there's a technical term from ancient Buddhism called near enemy. like fool's gold is the near enemy of gold. Actually, I'm not an expert on fool's gold, but it probably looks like gold, but it's not valuable. Or brass isn't gold, or imitation plastic isn't the real pearl. So it looks like it's the near enemy. So we don't want to fall into complacency and indifference, or too much emptiness and not enough compassion or connection. So Buddha's always called his teaching the middle way, not Buddhism, not all or nothing, not empty and void and meaningless on one hand, nihilism, and not materialism. Everything is just what it seems to be, and the only thing that's real is what I can touch or weigh. That's a little too material. But balancing them both, so things are not as real as they seem, but there's still a difference between, the daydream that we're usually in, the dreams we have at night, and a nightmare. There's a difference. If our children having nightmares, we try to wake them up. We don't just say, "Oh, it's just a dream. It's busy.
Empty.
I'm busy binging on Netflix." We know it's a dream, but we try to wake them up. That's like being like the Buddha. He, or any enlightened sage tries to help us wake up. And if we can't wake up, they know it's not the end of the world, that it's a matter of time and practice and changing conditions. Everything changes. The nightmare is not going to last forever. The dream, the sleep isn't going to last forever. Parents know that. Still, they try to wake up. They don't just say, "Oh, it's just a dream. It's empty. It doesn't matter." And meanwhile, the child is crying and tearing at their bedclothes and making, maybe even wetting the bed. It's a nightmare. So similarly, we go around in life and there's people living a nightmare. They're not all happily endowed in first world countries with this kind of opportunities that you and I and others have. Whatever's wrong with this country, there's still a lot great with it, and this world and this life. It's an endangered planet, but it's still a beautiful planet. So I know
how have you achieved the middle path?
Nihilistic. Let's cut to the chase. Some Buddhists are too nihilistic. Some Buddhist teachers are, in my opinion, and on a strong opinion, too nihilistic, and some are too materialistic. It's they're human beings.
Okay, because you, in my mind,
nobody's perfect.
You
fall into those things.
You've achieved this middle path. Because I'm sure you've come across all sorts of teachers, and you've thought deeply about these matters.
I've also talked with them and argued with them, or just agreed with them, and my friends and colleagues. We're always studying these subjects. Even today, I opened an email from Sharon Salzberg's social media people, and she's teaching a one-day course, and it was about equanimity and the difference between complacent indifference and equanimity. That came today, and it's a one-day course sometime soon, so people could tune into that. It's probably on the web, Sharon Salzberg. So we're all, trying to work with this because it's a challenge.
Yeah.
For Sharon too. The middle way it's a balancing act, but it's not a high wire act. But, it's like riding a bicycle. It's a balancing act. You have to pay attention. Or skiing. Once you get good at it, it's not that hard and it's fun, but you have to pay attention. Otherwise, you have an accident. Inattention. It's not really an accident. It's like mindfulness protects you from accidents. Mindlessness breeds accidents at the wheel or in life. Like middle way. So not being uptight, not being overly self-conscious, but not being sleepwalking through life either.
Yeah, I don't know.
And caring a great deal.
I guess you just have to learn how to balance. I guess that's the thing. You just have to be
work
conscious
on
of
balance in our lives. Work on balance and appropriateness. And what's appropriate and balanced in one place might not be another. I probably have told you this before. I always say this because it's easy to explain in caricature form. On New Year's Eve, not so moderate. The rest of the year, I'm in more moderate. Or whatever you like. On Saturday night, you might have a good time, stay up too late, and eat and drink too much. I'm not recommending it, but you might. And the other days, you don't do that. If you do it every day or too many days, you have a problem.
Okay, so it's the same kind of thing.
Moderation is important, but also in moderation.
Yeah.
Not
Okay,
all or
that's
nothing.
fair.
So what's appropriate for you is also maybe not for somebody else, that they're a little different. I mean, within the realms of norms and laws and, not harming people and the environment. But in general, you find your own balance and your own, right, work and play balance, or personal and social balance, or alone and with others balance.
Well, I think
When
that
it's enough.
to me, the hardship comes when someone is so empty and nihilistic that they're not even connecting with others, which is
Right.
why I think
No. I'm thinking of some of the same teachers you're thinking of, probably, but we're not going to pick on anybody. I'm not going to say. I'm just kind of joking. Like,
I'm not
it needs to
picking.
fall into that. No, there were books about it. The Japanese Zen masters in World War II were telling the Japanese soldiers to go and fight bravely and kill the Chinese in Nanking and Beijing, World War II, because it's all empty. Japanese Zen masters, you can look it up. This is not Buddhism. This is Japanese martial, culture and like xenophobic pride. And you might think if somebody's a Zen master, they wouldn't fall into that. Buddhism is supposed to be a nonviolent religion. Things are, form and emptiness arises together. Things are empty of our ideas of them, but they also have a shape. And a fork is different than a spoon. It has a different function.
So I have a question about death. Yay!
Yeah.
We're getting to this point.
So today I got a quote. One of my old friends died. So somebody sent me a quote from the Heart Sutra saying, no birth, no death, no body, no mind, no suffering. And I think that's a nice thing to say when somebody dies. But, that's a very Buddhist, almost nihilistic, not really side of it. How about, I'm going to miss him. He was a great guy. They don't make him like that anymore. I wouldn't take up that side because I loved him and I have heart rather than just brain, But I also know it's not at the end of the world. He lived to be 85 and he has children and grandchildren and he had a great life. It's more tragic if you have to bury your children and your grandchildren than that they bury you. So it's not nihilistic to understand the impermanence and omnipresence of death, the balance.
So a dear friend of mine fell. Well, there's so many different deaths that I'm facing now personally. So I'm empty nesting.
I just told you my wife is done.
I know. So
She's dead any week.
In a week?
Any week. The doctor's telling her this for the last 6 months from cancer.
So how have you been with her, knowing that your wife is dying within a week? How can we support those that we love who are dying?
We have to be with whatever is and do our best, do our duty, like I'm trying to make her comfortable and safe and secure and have home hospice and, help channel the visiting and the phone calls so she's not exhausted all the time taking care of other people and can channel some energy into taking care of herself or rest or her priorities, the younger ones. Death, the Buddha said death is our teacher. Death is the great, remembrance of death is the greatest meditation because it prioritizes life and gratitude and appreciation, and also nonviolence, like not taking of life. So there's a lot to be said in that, what kind of meditation that is. It's not just the calming and clearing and not thinking meditation. It's also you're looking, if we're into meditating with death and into being with death, and then I have to think about, like now, wow, Debbie's dying. This is not just abstract like I've studied for so many years. What does that even mean? Is she leaving me? No. But she's not going to be around. Really, this is hard to understand, and it's sad. But we've been together 10 years, so that's also beautiful. Like we found each other in midlife and have a beautiful life together. in the Dharma, let's say, in family and in life and in community. So into being with death, not hiding it and avoiding it like we do sanitize it in this culture. And the cemeteries are beautiful parks. You can walk around it and enjoy. In the old world where I lived for so long in India and Himalayas, there are cremation grounds by the rivers, and there's vultures and jackals pulling bones from those places. Or, in the Ganges in Benares, Varanasi in India, they throw the remains in the Ganges, and there are pieces of bodies and bones floating in the Ganges. And one of my friends who was a Russian journalist, do you think that person has traveled the world and seen things? Mm-hmm. We went to that place where they burned the bodies in Benares at sunset with a group of friends, and she took one look and one smell, and she threw up all over.
Wow. Yeah, it's not pleasant.
She was in Bosnia at the killing fields and things, but it was just like too much seeing a body burnt, and I felt like it was my body, like this is firewood. But that was so good, and it freed me from just identifying with the body and being more with the flow of life. With the flow of life, and what a miracle! I've lived this long, and we've all lived this long, and.
Well, how do those
There's
insights...
something that beyond something continues.
How do those insights help you with Debbie?
Well, I've known Debbie was going to die for a long time. The doctors gave her a bad prognosis over a year ago, that she only had 3 to 6 months to live because of stage 4 lung cancer. And that spread to her brain, and she wasn't a smoker, so... you go through all stages of grieving, of shock and sadness and denial, and you try to question it, and it's not fair, and I wish I could turn back, do the, whatever it's called, button, the replay, and the backwards button on the video machine or whatever. And you sort of do that in your mind, which is fine, but it's part of the grieving process. And then you have to live with it more, and you start to accept, you deal with the feelings of sadness, and then gradually sort of living with it and accepting it, not wishing it, but living with it and accepting it. Just like if you have a chronic pain, or if you have diabetes, you give yourself insulin or something, and you're fine. And you watch your diet. It's not the end of the world. If you have a chronic disease, of course, we all have the fatal disease of being alive. So it all ends in death. But that's kind of like black humor, because we're alive. I mean, we don't have to dwell on the death part, but it's a very important thing to contemplate in life. That's what all the religions teach. And Buddha especially said that death is the greatest contemplation. It helps us appreciate life and live now, truly. And also I want to say all of the world's religions, I think, religion among humans in the 5 or 10,000 years ago would probably started with trying to deal with death, and the shamans or whoever was responsible, the death of elders, the death of pets, the death of the sacred animals that helped them live, the way native people respected the animals they killed and dealt with their deaths. And what the children said, oh, how could you kill that beautiful deer? And then they say, well, so we could feed the baby, but we'll make a beautiful, with the skin, you'll have a blanket. Skin will warm you now.
Well, what to do with the... Okay,
and
so...
it became more evolved into religions and death rites and rituals. But this understanding of everything is sacred, everything is holy, life and death is a cycle. That's the important part, I think.
I can get all conceptual. Life and death is a cycle. Death helps me learn about life. And in my when I get to some meta moment in a meditation, I can get there, and it's like I'm learning something deep and having a huge insight. And then there's the pain. Like I literally dropped my son off to the airport, and I'm not thinking of anything, but I find tears, just giving him a hug, and just tears rolling down my face of just the utter sadness of missing them. And even though he's still alive,
I'm jealous.
But it's just
that you have those poignant, loving moments with your son. My parents are gone, so my mother couldn't even. My father used to drive me to the airport to go to college, to go to India, to go to Europe. My mother couldn't take it.
Yeah.
She'd say goodbye in her own house, and then we'd go out the door, and she'd fall apart a little and cry, and then do whatever she did. I don't know. Let's exaggerate, and then she would clean or do something to feel better, to distract herself. Whatever coping mechanism mom had.
Yeah.
So that's how much she loved me, and we always tried to get her to go, but she couldn't. So that's the love. At the time I was too young to appreciate it, and I said, "Oh, she's poor mom and neurotic." But you guys don't have any feelings, right, Dad? Right. I'm Sergeant Bilko, and you're Jackie Gleason. Go to India, Maybe you'll wait there. Good.
Okay, well, here.
He wanted to go either, but he had a whole different way of showing it. Like he didn't send me on a taxi to the airport. He was going to take me, be with me till the last moment.
Yeah.
Like I said.
Yeah, I do both.
Airport and then crying. That's life.
Yeah.
Life. Start with the Buddha. Life.
But what to do with the missing?
Life. I'm sad, but happy for you.
Right.
You're getting a life. You're getting out of here where I live, this horrible place that you grew up.
I'm like, I can go there. I can go there. I'm like, I need to let go so that you can live your life and, do your thing, go to North Carolina, whatever.
So
I can go there.
Nest and use their wings.
Yeah, I get there and I want that.
Unlaunched.
Yeah, I want that. But like you were saying.
Sad.
Yeah, it's sad. So, so here you are, perhaps,
letting go.
For this 1 week of, you have these potentially 7 precious days with Debbie, and how are you dealing with the pain, the missing? I don't know how to
do it. You really want
it.
me to tell you? I gained 20 or 30 pounds this year. That's how I'm dealing with it.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, but I'm not drinking and drugging and womanizing, having car accidents, cutting myself, doing things that some people do.
Yeah.
So middle way. So I'll lose the weight, later. I lost it 2 years ago, and I'll be more outside. Now I'm sitting around in waiting rooms, and Debbie's in bed a lot, and I'm watching television and reading and sitting around. And I have a trainer, and I go to the health club, but
I know this is awful.
How am I taking care? How am I coping with it? Okay.
Yeah.
Not perfect. Okay.
I hate to say this, but it really makes me feel good.
It's the truth. So you don't think I'm above it all?
Well, it makes me feel like, okay.
Everybody has a little, whatever you want to say. I'll use the Yiddish word, schmutz, on their pupik. So somewhere down there you got schmutz.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not caca. It's just a little, smell or sweat. But, it's like no windshield is clean. If you're driving the car, you may have just cleaned it, but it's already getting. So that's life. You go through life, and that's part of it.
Yeah. That comforts me.
And try to live where you live in the nice green Pacific Northwest instead of Flint, Michigan, where they don't even have decent water, not to mention in Africa or Southeast Asia. But, nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
And so I also get through it by my family and friends and community support. And hospice is fantastic, and they come to the house and ask for help. I mean, it's hard to ask for help, but get good help. Mm-hmm. And it's bringing Debbie and I closer. Also, it's sad, we've already lost a lot because she's muffled in painkillers and the results of chemo and then radiation. So it's sad. But sad is just a feeling. It's not depression. It doesn't have to be despair. You're supposed to be sad when your child leaves the nest.
Well, and not go in despair, though. Like, I don't want to go into despair and be neurotic either.
So you healthily process the emotions, like you cry and then you drive home and then you do whatever's next.
And I call up Lama Surya does. Help me!
Or you call somebody, say, make me one with everything. And you remember the joke.
Yeah.
It's a good joke. There's another joke that's the punchline. I don't know if you remember when I was growing up. The genie, you remember genies from Aladdin from 1,001 Nights?
Yes.
We kids, we used to say, and probably we saw it on Walt Disney's movie or something, the animated early cartoony, not from the book itself, the great Persian scripture, but we knew about the genie, and the joke was, if the genie gave you one wish, what would you ask for? So we boys would say, make me a milkshake. And poof, you're a milkshake. So make me one with everything is the punchline of a joke, and life goes on. And maybe you'll be sad tomorrow too about your son leaving, but then he'll call you, or he'll call you for money or to send something he forgot, and you'll be back with him. He won't be as gone as he seems to be.
Yeah, actually, you did get, you saw the email that he did send me, like, I think I need more money. I'm like, okay.
He's not that far away.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not out of his mind, so that's love. That's why it says in a good book, love is greater than death. Amen. It's beyond time and space and distance. And if you just think of your son, you're with your son, just like if you were at work and he was at home or somewhere else in the city.
Well, and so you in the book, I actually started crying when I read this. You talk about your mom, Joyce Miller, and how you accompanied her during her last days in the hospital, and how you've meditated with her, and still have a connection with her. So even though she's physically not here, you still have a connection. I wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
I don't remember if I wrote this in the book. I've published 15 books or something, and I tell these stories also that are not always in the book about the same subject, or the editors cut it out, or I forgot about it. I was writing the book 5 years ago. But I don't know if you could see, I'm wearing a little wrist mala, beads, Indian sandal beads from India on my wrist. So it's always good to chant some mantras when I'm waiting around for something, or I don't know. It's in yogi custom. So my mother, in her last days, they thought she had MRSA, multi-resistant staph infection. So she was a little bit quarantined, or they took off all her clothes and her jewelry, and my sister took, and all. And so she was just lying there with like a white Johnny or clothes, not pajamas even, just like cut properly in bed. And she only had one thing on, and it was this wrist beads that I'd given her once that I never saw her wear on her wrist. It was on her ankle.
Oh.
She'd been wearing it on her ankle all these years. And
oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many years, but like for years, not just that day.
Oh, wow.
And when they took her jewelry, meaning my sister and all of them, and she said, "Don't take that." And it wasn't something that is that like valuable or somebody's going to steal. And it was like she wanted to keep her heart, spiritual connection with her oldest child. So that's intermeditation. And she wasn't meditating, but it made her connected like a lifeline, like an umbilical cord of subtle energy. I cried when I saw that because I knew what it meant. It was like, that's the one thing she kept, to go to the grave.
Yeah.
And then they dressed her nicely for burial, but they didn't take that off. But she had that, even though they took away everything else because they thought of Mercer and the jewelry and, to the family. But she wanted to keep that, and they kept it. And it was on her ankle, not her wrist. So sort of where nobody would see it, or just because she was my mother, she liked to do it her way. I don't know. I shouldn't try to explain. I'm just telling you, it was definitely there. It's like my umbilical, my belly button is here, and it's an innie, but there's still a part connected to hers, I'm sure. just like you and your son. And really to all others.
Yeah.
To all others in some subtle heart way, with a big heart that includes others. Not just
How?
your son, but some others that you love. And, we all have our circles. And we could open our heart and expand those concentric circles a little and, I think, be more inclusive. That's really the practice of intermeditation, not getting other people to meditate with you and, like, I want you to do what I do. No, it's more of releasing your separateness. So you're not going in looking for something. You are releasing your defense mechanism so that you have, you're more present and alive and interbeing with whoever's there or whatever's there. It might be your pet. Might be your sleeping child. Like in chapter 5 of this book, you asked me about it. So I called it the Mamas and Papas Sutras because it's really about, with others, with your family. We all know it's challenging if you go home to visit your parents when you're a young seeker, or if you have holiday gatherings, or even every night at dinner, whatever your situation is. It's hard to be as you would like to be all the time. How about if I put it like that?
Yes.
Not control freak, but be your best self all the time.
Okay, good.
And it's also not really necessary. It's a nice ideal, though, but, So we work on that, and we try to recondition and decondition so, we have new habits. But still, I think it's very important, like if you have conflict with your teenager, go in their room in the middle of the night and just watch them sleeping and breathing and intermeditate with them. You don't have to close your eyes and go inward and try not to hear their breathing. Their breathing will be your best meditation. Just hear it and watch their breaths go up and down. If they're 10, 11, 12, if they're a baby, people do it naturally. Right. Everybody loves a baby in the house, right? You smell it. That's called co-meditating with baby.
Yeah.
Everybody loves a baby. The smell is happy. The sound is happy. Hopefully they're not, colicky crying, but, babies cry. That means they're alive and they can use their vocal cords. Or they want something and they can't put in words. So, it's a shift in framework.
I used to do that with my son when he would get him.
If they don't talk to you, the teenagers, and you watch them sleep at night, you'll talk to them. Angels will be interpreting for you. It's like I call it momitation. Yeah. Not trying to get a teenager to meditate with you at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. That don't work.
Yeah. That's interesting. When my son was little, he had really, really bad tantrums, and he would just scream uncontrollably for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It felt like an eternity when it happened. Yeah. And I just remember just holding him really tight. And then, because it's hard when you're a parent and you hear them screaming, because it just sets off all the emergency alarms in your head, and you're trying to just love a child when you're kind of want to push, you're kind of ah, oh. So I remember just holding him, and then I would sit there and listen to his breathing, and then I would breathe, just breathe the same way that he was breathing, and then finally,
right, that's co-meditating together.
Yeah.
And being together, and then you both calm down.
Yeah, and then he would calm down. Then once he, for whatever reason, we never said a word. I was just holding him really tight and breathing in the same way in and out with him. And then at a certain point, I started breathing more slowly, and then he started breathing more slowly. And then both of us finally calmed down. But it would take 15 minutes. I don't know. Like I said, it felt like an eternity when it was happening. But it took a while to have that happen. So I was wondering if you could...
One of my friends' grandson and his wife just had their first baby. And that baby, according to this first-time mother, cries 3 hours at a time every night and is colicky.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Rather than saying you must be exaggerating, I was just thinking, wow, how does she deal with that? She's a better man than I.
She needs canceling headphones.
Because she was saying every night. So she's probably holding him, and her husband's walking around holding him, and baby's still crying. I don't know. And maybe it's not 3 hours. Maybe it seems like 3 hours. Even if it's 1 hour, 2 hours, that's very long. It's like
Yeah.
labor, right?
Yeah.
Very.
And when it's your own baby, it's like there's something that pierces your heart in ways. I can hear another colicky baby on the plane and like it doesn't bother me,
Yeah.
but when it's your own baby calling in
Yeah.
need and you're trying
Yeah.
desperately to give
Yeah.
them solace,
Oh,
yeah, it's so hard. I was wondering if you could step us through your inner meditation process. You have this Tonglen? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Tonglen. Tonglen.
Tonglen. And you talk about a meditation where you could we do in the next 7 minutes a shorter version, or is it too long to do?
I think it's too long and it's too deep.
Okay.
Meaning it's a little scary to like take in the negative without
Okay.
preparation.
Okay.
Give up positive. Some people feel like they're going to get stuck with it or get sick. Or
Okay.
something.
All right. So let me ask you a question. So
But
tell
I'm
us.
glad to talk about a little the principle of like
Yeah.
reverse
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
tendency
Tell me the principle, and
to
then
claim what you want and to resist what you don't want, as if these wants and diswants are totally correct and right.
say it again. Say it again.
First you breathe out and you breathe in and you practice like sending and taking the breath, and then breathing, giving and taking and receiving. And if you do it with another person, you could be eye gazing or just sitting together or something. So you're breathing together and kind of forget who's who, and attuning, resonating, like tuning forks on the same effortlessly. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's like dancing. You don't have to imitate each other perfectly, but you have to be in the same room, more or less. Stay nearby.
Right.
So
Right.
this helps reverse or revert the tendency to grab and cling to what you want and to push away and resist, have aversion for what you don't want. It's just the same, really, wanting and unwanting, attachment, attraction, and aversion.
Okay.
So it evens out. So sometimes Tonglen is called equalizing self and other, rather than like, ego being more important than other. So you equalize self and other, or you exchange self and other, first giving and receiving the breath, and then vibrating together and wishing each other well, and then taking on their burdens and wishing them, to take on their burdens, which is what Jesus talked about. So you kind of breathe in their difficulties or negativities, and you breathe out your strengths and resources. And it's really a creative imagination based on not recoiling from the unwanted and not grabbing at the wanted. So you get much more equanimity and balance and resilience. You're more like flowing rather than brittle or like addictive, like grabbing and pushing away. We go through life like that, and you see it.
Okay, so
That aversion, lust and desire, attachment, and aversion becomes hatred, anger, violence. And so we practice seeing things through the other's eyes. This is all part of Tonglen. So you see where they're coming from, like, oh, that's why, I could never imagine, vote for the wall, but that's what those people think. If I grew up where they lived and heard the radio stations that they listened to, I'd probably think the same.
right. So I have a couple questions related to some of my other spiritual practices, so that or things that I know.
Tonglen's a great practice, and if you're
Yeah.
practicing these kind of things and you have a teacher or you like learn how, it's very effective.
Yeah. I have two different pieces of information that make me worried about practicing this kind of practice.
Yes.
One in which I've talked to shamans who say that their middle world spirits are like merging with the dead person, or in a cemetery you may have wayward spirits and that are disembodied spirits that are looking to occupy your body. And so don't necessarily go in trying to merge with things around you. And then another, which was about a transmission teacher who said, don't necessarily go and breathe in someone's challenge and anger and hatred and take that on because you're taking on their karma. And I don't know how those things, are these factors? Is it a different thing? Is there a right or wrong way of doing this?
It's different language, but I'll say, first of all, this practice that's why I didn't want to do it in 7 minutes. It begins with resting in like voidness and emptiness. So it's like groundless and boundless, openness and awareness, limitless. So breathing into that, you don't get stuck with anything. Everything dissolves, just like when you flush the toilet, it goes into a leach field, which goes into the earth, and the earth kind of purifies it eventually, right?
Okay.
Plants and roots, get the nutrients from the waste, and the water gets purified by the time it gets to the rivers and the oceans, theoretically.
Right.
So that's why it's an advanced practice. Also, why it's scary to people, because they don't have that feeling. So you feel like you get stuck with it, like you catch an infectious disease or take on people's karma. In general, Buddhism teaches you can't take on people's karma, but in specific, what take on means is, if you carry somebody else's suitcase, you're kind of helping them take on their burden. So that's a little tiny bit of karma. But in general, you won't get stuck with other people's karmic baggage. Now, the thing about the spirits and all, there's a lot of different talk about the spirit world and different ideas and lingo, and some of it's synonymous and some of it may be different. So I would say if you think like that, then don't practice, in cemeteries and with dead bodies, and just maybe co-meditate, intermeditate with beautiful nature and beautiful, not just beautiful, like nature and animals and people around you. And you don't have to just say, but what about the dead bodies and the, malignant spirits and all that? Like, that's a little extra.
Right.
You're really a fearless, like, samurai spiritual seeker, then people go to graveyards and burning places, burning crematoriums and cancer wards to, quote, meditate on those horrific things to get over it. But that's very, quote, advanced or like kamikaze practice,
Right.
So dive into it. You want the light, oh moth? Dive into the flame, the candle, that's a bit much.
Yeah, I hear you. So I hate to.
But to have a better life, today, you don't have to be so extreme. Neither a kamikaze or a Olympic meditator or a competitive yogi. Just a mensch and a decent person, and cultivate your best self, and feed that self, that side, and notice the other parts, and don't feed those parts. You'll be fine.
Lama Surya, I truly love you. Thank you for being my life. Thank you for being on this show. Thank you for writing this book, Make Me One with Everything. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.